Hello, Formula One fans, and welcome back to F1 in Focus. We are the only Formula One podcast that brings you one show a week where a Dutchie and an Englishman, a Lewis Hamilton and a Max Verstappen fan, can very much get along in the wonderful world of Formula One. This week, we'll talk about a Carlos Sainz masterclass. We'll talk about DRS trains. We'll talk about Oscar Piastri re-signing or getting a multi-year extension with McLaren. And of course, we talk everything to do for Singapore Grand Prix and our little predictions about the Japanese Grand Prix. My name is John, and I wouldn't be able to do this show without the man with the best hair in the business, the man, the myth, the legend himself. It's none other than James Hazel.
I don't think there's any myths around me as far as I'm aware, but
There definitely
hello,
is,
how are you doing?
I'm quite all right, mate.
Good.
You?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, thanks, yeah.
That's good. 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. UK, I think, this weekend. You ready for that?
No. We're getting to the part of the season that I hate, just because of all the early starts.
Well, just think if you were Japanese.
Well, yeah, to be fair, in Europe, we've got it very, very good. Yeah. Respect
and all the US
to all the American
late,
and
right?
Aussie fans, yeah.
I think when the US races start, they are very late for us. So
Yes, yeah.
So
I don't mind those.
Well, I wanted to say you're a little bit younger than I am, but you're actually not. So never mind that one.
No.
James, so much to discuss. So many mixed opinions about Singapore Grand Prix. We can say one thing: the Max Verstappen era has ended.
Yep, that's it. He's
Wrap
washed.
it up.
Yep.
Washed up.
That's
Done.
it. We've seen the prime. It's over. The Carlos Sainz era of Formula One has begun.
Yeah. What did I predict last week, though?
I think you predicted Norris to win.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, well, I was close.
To be fair, he came very close and he had a fantastic race.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you want to do this? His statements, I'll throw in unpopular statements like I just did with Max Verstappen washed? Or
if you want, yeah, go for it.
Let's talk about Red Bulls first, though. They had the worst weekend ever. They finished fifth, and I don't even know how far behind Perez hit this time. Not in the points, I think, even.
Was he not?
Penalty as well?
I thought he might have snuck into the points. Did he? No, you're right, he didn't. No,
he got a penalty as well for, I don't know, trying a very optimistic move.
Yeah, no, he did finish in the points. He finished 8th, that's right.
Oh, he finished 8th. Okay, that's all right. Well, but seriously, though, I think the biggest question is, did the directives nerve Red Bull, or is there something else going on? I've got a definite opinion about this, but what do you think?
Christian Horner and Adrian Newey said no, which even if the directive did affect them, they would say that. I do actually believe them on this. I don't think that the directive has ruined Red Bull at all. And I think in Suzuka, and I'll, raise my hands and say I got it wrong if it doesn't pan out this way, but I think they'll be back to normal in Suzuka. And the reason I think this is because Singapore has always been a bogey track for the faster cars. Look at that. Towards the beginning
Mercedes.
Towards the beginning of the Mercedes domination era, however you want to word it, they always struggled at Singapore. I think it's just the nature of the track. So who knows? It could actually be a combination of both, and we'll find out this weekend at Suzuka. But personally, I don't think that's the case. I think Red Bull are going to bounce back and win it in Suzuka.
Can you explain the nature of the track, why you think it isn't the directives coming into effect, but why it could be the car having troubles there? Or shall I get a go at that one?
Well, I mean, I don't know for certain, but to me, I'd imagine the problem is that it's basically Monaco, but faster and longer. You've got tight and twisty bits, which is okay, but then you have got some faster corners and you have got some faster straights that Monaco just doesn't have. And then the bumpy nature of the circuit means that you just can't run the car as low as you might want to for those sorts of speeds that you'd get up to. So for Red Bull, certainly a car that they can run the car very low, but seems to be something to do with their suspension at the very least. When they can't run it that low for this, for the how low they would ordinarily want to run it for the speeds they're going to be going at, that massively affects the downforce because of the ground effects setup of the cars for this current generation of cars. And that relies on the car being low but not really touching the ground. And the pressure of the air underneath the car effectively sucking it down onto the track for the grip. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's exactly what I had in mind. I think a Red Bull is a car that should be driven as low as possible to make the most out of it. There is a new measurement in place to measure the wear on the planks, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that tipped me off was Valtteri Bottas saying we actually have to put the car a little bit higher because we wouldn't be legal at the end of the race anymore. And I think that's exactly what Red Bull has. Like, it's too bumpy to put the car low, and this car doesn't perform well when it's put on higher. So the higher downforce tracks they don't do well at. We figured that out a while ago. And this situation is actually way worse because they actually have to drive it higher than they normally would be doing as well.
Yeah, this is probably why Red Bull don't, well, other than Singapore, as we've now found out, don't really have a downside to the car, because this just seems to highlight that the amount of grip and downforce they're generating through the ground effect of the floor and everything around that, because it's not just the floor, it's the entire package, isn't it? And how air might be sent over the wing or around the sides of the wheels, and how that kind of gets under the car and affects the ground effect of the car. This just kind of highlights that their ground effect must be very, very powerful, and that's why they can perform well at pretty much any circuit. Like, they have immense grip all the time, apart from in Singapore when Max looked like he was driving on an ice rink most of the time. But they have grip, but they have good tyre management, they have great corner speed, they have great top speed. Like, there's not really a weakness to this car other than when they have to jack it up because of the bumpy nature of a circuit such as Singapore. But really, Singapore's a bit of a anomaly on the calendar. There's not really any other circuit quite like that. So, but I think Red Bull have been saying for a little while that, or at least downplaying expectations around Singapore, saying that they thought it was going to be a difficult circuit for them. So, yeah, really, we kind of got what they predicted, and probably maybe not what we were predicting, because looking at it from the outside, Red Bull don't seem to have a weakness, but now we know they do.
Exactly. Luckily, that weakness isn't there all the time.
Yeah, true. Yeah, yep.
And I think it's the thing that also was like, I'm pretty sure this is an outlier, is the response from Max, like being a little bit disappointed about qualifying, but afterwards saying, he just missed the spot. It's what it is. Which, not being necessarily tilted or something, just more of an acceptance period, I think. The only thing he said was frustrating that they changed it. They lowered the height a little bit before the qualifying and actually went downhill from there, which was a miss gamble. I think, and this is the next thing we'll talk about, that if Max would get a penalty and he would start 14th or 15th, they would just break Parc Fermé and start in the pits with a new setup to try different things this weekend.
Probably, maybe just throw some new parts on it while they can, because at that point you can already accept that. I mean, it's starting from 11th. There is potential of a podium.
Yeah, 15th.
Yeah, maybe that's a bit more difficult, because overtaking, we know, is very difficult on that circuit as it is. But also we know that there is a very high chance of a safety car. They also kind of look at roughly where safety cars are generally generated, like specific points on the circuit, things like that, and that can play an effect on whether it is, how long a safety car might last or whether it becomes a red flag. And they look at all these things and factor it into like potential race strategies and stuff. But starting from 11th, they get lucky with the safety car, which they very much didn't at this race.
Also,
Max could have been straight in with a shot at a podium and even a win, even when his car is completely...
He pitted one lap before the second virtual safety car. Before the virtual safety car came out, he just pitted. So
I mean, it didn't cost him too much. I don't think that. I think the real problem is that the first safety car, obviously, that was way too early for the Red Bulls, starting on the hard tyres. And it was even early for some of the other cars on the medium tyres.
Yeah.
But it was good enough that it made their mediums onto hards or soft onto hards as it was for Leclerc. It made that strategy work for them. And they had to do a bit of tyre management to make sure that those hard tyres got to the end of the race. It's better to do that than have to stop without a safety car at all. So,
yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think Japan also, like it showed with Max Verstappen's response on this. I think we'll just be winning again 20 seconds ahead if nothing strange happens, honestly.
Yeah, I think so.
If anything, it shows that this directive doesn't hurt Red Bull. It just hurts when they can't take the most advantage of it. So.
Yeah. I'm not really sure who it's affected, to be honest. Maybe...
I don't think you can say in this circuit, though, because it's such an outlier anyways.
Yeah, I suppose it's hard to judge because it is an outlier, like you said. So, yeah, I think we'll get a better picture at Japan.
It's Monaco, but I wouldn't say worse. It's Monaco with a little bit more speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is what it is. It's not my favorite track. I do think the change made it a little bit better, if I'm honest.
I liked that change. But did we get a DRS zone in that?
No, we got 3 DRS zones and didn't add a 4 DRS zone.
Yeah, because I think the drivers wanted one, didn't they?
Yeah.
And then I don't know if we actually know yet, but at least some teams kind of vetoed that and said we don't want a DRS zone.
No, and I can understand why, because if you don't have that much DRS there, you could do Carlos Sainz, and you can basically just hold up everyone.
Yeah.
With another DRS zone there, you might be in trouble anyways, right? So
yes, yeah, because that's very close to the start-finish, which has got DRS zone.
As well, into another one.
Exactly, that's not far from the long straight. That's another one, so yeah.
I think that's why. Anyways, I think the change was good. But here it is. I saw people saying this was the best race they've seen in years, or indeed the best race this was this season. James, controversial opinion from my side, and I'll try to defend it in a bit. This wasn't actually a very good race. It was a pretty boring race with a strategic, exciting end.
I'm going to disagree.
I know.
Because I thought it was a great race. Because we got what I've been asking for a long time, which is a fight at the front. And we might not necessarily had any specific overtake moves or maneuvers, but we had the front 4 or 5 cars at one point, very, very close together. Pit stops kind of screwed Leclerc over, despite him trying to generate a gap, which he didn't seem to get called up on, which I thought he would have done during the safety car. He seemed to lose a bit of time on Sainz.
Yeah, he finished 3/10 before Max something.
Yeah. Well, to be fair to him, he had an engine problem again, didn't he?
Yeah.
So he had to go into massive engine management mode and an actual mode on the engine that was producing way less power, and so his lap times were quite drastically down. But he kind of created a gap to Carlos, but then that screwed him anyway, so maybe that's why they didn't bother investigating it, because he screwed himself, because he then got caught up not being able to release because of the traffic
through
the pits in the pit stop phase. So
He already had his 5 seconds penalty built into his own stop.
Exactly, yeah. So, but the race itself, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I liked the strategy side of it. I felt like it was very kind of edge of your seat stuff. There was clearly a lot of pressure on Carlos through the majority of the race, not necessarily when Leclerc's been told to kind of maintain or build up a gap behind him.
Mm-hmm.
But it just, the race felt tense, and it had that kind of adrenaline that I mentioned in a previous episode where I said, like, that's what I want. That's what I want out of a race. And I want, going into the last 6 or 7 laps, it looked like any one of the top 4 could have won it. Russell could have made an overtake that might have gone maybe not wrong enough for a crash, but you could have ended up with a situation where Hamilton gets through, or Hamilton makes a move on, I don't think he would have done, but maybe makes a move on Russell, and then them two kind of back off, and then that relieves a bit of pressure
George
on...
to speed up, though.
Yeah. But, that could have relieved a bit of pressure off Norris, who then could have made an attack on Carlos. So it was like, it felt like there was a lot of different things that could have happened, and okay, maybe none of them happened apart from who would have predicted that Russell would have just binned it on the last third of the last lap. But even that was drama, and it was just I thought I would agree that it was the best race of the season so far, because it was a tightly fought battle at the front for the majority of the race. And yes, there was periods of like time management mode and driving very strategically from Carlos, where he was going fast where he needed to, but then he was going very slow where he needed to. And part of that was to screw over Verstappen and keep the Red Bulls out of the fight.
You'll talk about Sainz's strategic calls soon, though, but
let
me try to show you
my
point.
You make your point now. I've made mine.
Right. And I get where you're coming from, mate. I think, for example, let me start with that. Zandvoort was the best race of the season. Unpredictability, changes everywhere. Most overtakes we've ever seen before. It had everything, crash, spins, everything. And Max didn't win there with 2 fingers in his nose, right? He just had to work for it. So I think Zandvoort is my straight A's race this year so far. This year, this race had a couple of things. It had DRS trains, a lot of DRS trains. Did I mention they had DRS trains? They had DRS trains all over. The first 20 laps, 25 laps, almost until the safety car hit, everyone was just managing, not trying to overtake, except from Max and Checo from the back, where Checo didn't even manage to get an overtake in. Yeah, everyone else, between number 1 and number 20, there were 0.3 a lap difference. So that means everyone was managing. Everyone was in the DRS train. Alonso was just sitting back like, okay, I'm here. Take my time. Tires have to last. We can't do more than one stop. We're just going to sit this one out until something happens. Safety car comes. Yes, now something happens. First thing it startled me awake. I was like, okay, now might something happen, right? Then the race got in overdrive a little bit. It's something, a couple of things happen. But still, DRS train into DRS train into DRS train. If Max wasn't, like if there were a car in front that didn't eat tires like the Ferrari does, it would be a simple victory with 20 seconds ahead, 3 pit stops and all. The only reason it made it exciting in the end, and we have to applaud Sainz for that, was Sainz is eating away his tires. He knows he can't take out the 2 Mercedes who did a perfect strategy call going into the mediums and fresh ones. And they were all stuck in the DRS train. So if Carlos doesn't give Norris a DRS, there's no way Carlos can actually win this race or Norris can finish second.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect decision from Sainz. But the fact you can't overtake on this track, the fact that it was sort of fixed by a DRS train and everyone was just managing the tires the whole race, made it a pretty boring race until 10 laps in the end, and the safety car came, virtual safety car came, and we had that sort of fight, but it wasn't actually a fight. Because if you're number one, like Sainz, and you can say, okay, I'm letting number two come closer to me, because you can't overtake anyways. It's not going to happen. Then it's a fake fight for P1. Which felt a little bit worse.
It maybe was, but he's looking at the bigger picture as well. He's thinking, if Norris has got DRS,
it's a smart move. Don't get me wrong.
Russell can't get past him, and if Russell does get past him, he's going to get straight past Carlos Sainz because Carlos Sainz doesn't have DRS, and Russell and Hamilton are on the softer tyres. Which, to be fair, they were clearly. I think part of the reason they couldn't get past Norris as well was that their tyres were already starting to go off by the time they got to the back of that fight. Although they wouldn't have maybe got to the back of that fight with any other tyres, so it's like kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with that decision. I mean, I think it was.
If you want to win the race, it was the only decision you could make. So that
exactly, because otherwise you're just settling in for the positions that you're in, and that's
and we get another DRS train to the finish.
Yeah, but there's a couple of points I wanted to pick up on there because you talked about Ferrari, because they know they're going to chew up their tyres, that's why they're driving so slowly.
Definitely at the start, right?
To an extent. I don't think that was entirely the reason for it.
Entirely. Good one. Entirely.
A big part of it, and I mean, they even kind of talked about on the radio after the safety car, they wanted to keep the pack bunch together because that, especially after the safety car, because that screwed Red Bull. And they were probably... It's kind of classic and slightly stupid Ferrari, but they're looking too far outfield for like who they're racing against, because they're probably not racing against the Red Bulls in, like 75 or 80 or 90% of the situations that could have occurred during that race.
They should fight Mercedes. They should only watch Mercedes.
Yeah, but they had Mercedes kind of kept under wraps to an extent anyway, but they were keeping the pack backed up because then when the pack spread out a little bit, not a lot, and then we get a safety car and everyone pits apart from the Red Bulls. Everyone's out on fresh tyres. The Red Bulls are not, and the Hasses, and the Red Bulls are closer to the front of the pack, but they're on old hard tyres and everyone's on brand new hard tyres, so they're kind of easy pickings for a lot of the field. But Ferrari's tactic there is, if you keep the pack close together, whenever they pit, even if it's a safety car pit stop, they're going to the back of the pack. If we let the pack spread out, they might be able to, pit and only lose, say, half a dozen positions rather than an entire dozen positions. So Ferrari... Yeah, they probably did need to look after their tyres, but they were 100% looking at Red Bull as well and just trying to make sure that there was no way that Red Bull could just somehow get themselves back in the race. And I thought that was quite smart racing from Ferrari in general to some extent. I mean, maybe they shouldn't have been looking that far away, but then at the end of the race, they still won. It didn't really matter, did it, that they were looking at that and that they weren't thinking of just running away with it. And Martin Brundle mentioned this on Sky Sports, and he said, I think it's a quote from Alan Prost, and that is that ideally you win the race by going as slowly as possible. And that's what Ferrari did. And I thought that was actually engaging personally, because it did feel like that first section of the race where there wasn't a lot happening other than maybe Max trying to get past some drivers and getting past some drivers, and apparently being told to cool it because you need to think about the length of the stint, and he's just like, he's just not caring. And
race pace on Sunday was pretty good though.
But other than that, the pack, maybe not a lot was happening, but there was an element of suspense. It did feel like at any moment the pin was going to get pulled and everything was going to erupt. So even that stage of the race I enjoyed. And the main reason I enjoyed it is just because all the cars were close together and it felt like, if one person could have made a mistake and they'd lose like 4 or 5 places.
True.
I mean, like Albon getting punted out of the...
This shows that the regulations does work, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
and that's it.
That's what I told you a couple of weeks ago. If it wasn't for Max taking away the wins, this is a really close field all the way. Anyways.
But it's more exciting when it's happening for the wins. that's the point.
I have to agree there, but I don't think it's the best race. I still think that was Zandvoort, where we couldn't even follow all the updates. One, because of bad car direction, but two, because there were just so many overtakes. There's no way of actually keeping up with them all.
Yeah.
And that felt more like a proper race to me. Well, this felt like, okay, this is the outlier. We do everything we can to, like you said, do everything slow. It's got to catch people out up to your restraints. You can't overtake anyways. I mean, Red Bull was a little bit unlucky even because they would have made a chance if Max would stay out one lap later, honestly, because he wouldn't be dropping back to 16th, but maybe to 10th or 9th.
Yeah, maybe, but...
That's the only thing. But on the other side, he's still 5th. He's never losing a second of sleep over it anyways, honestly.
Well, no.
And he
was never going to maintain that win record after the first set of pit stops. Like at that point, I don't think really he had a chance of winning it.
No, once the safety car hits, and like, oh, we're the only ones on hards.
Yeah,
or we're one.
So, the rest of the field, not quite a free pit stop, but a very.
He needed
cheap
to get another safety car later.
Yeah, and it was at the right time for those cars, near enough. It was maybe like 5 laps early. But for the Red Bulls, it was 20 laps early. So.
Yeah. And they couldn't start on mediums because then we'll be on the same strategy as the rest, and you could never get an advantage of it.
Exactly.
So it's just the way. Exactly. It was just the way it goes.
Yeah, and that all came about, because of qualifying, and that all came about because the car just didn't perform on that circuit. So,
second best race of the year.
For me, it's the best. I still think personally it's the best. I found that race more exciting than any of the races so far, including Zandvoort, because my problem with Zandvoort was that a lot of the excitement just came about because the weather put slower cars behind faster cars, and then they just made a quick deal out of getting past them. And it was like, yeah, there's loads of overtakes, but it was just, well, yeah, it's because it's, not Leclerc, because Leclerc's car was garbage that race, but it's like, it's Sainz or it's Russell or it's Hamilton overtaking Bottas and the Alpines and stuff like that. Like, there's nothing exciting about those overtakes because those cars...
I think it was so wet that everyone could make a mistake and everyone...
Well, there was a bit of that, yeah. There was a bit of that. But then you get that same thrill at a track like Singapore where there is no margin for error and they are very close to the walls at pretty much every corner of the circuit. So...
it's a different
kind of challenge and it's a different kind of excitement, but it's there. Anyway, but yeah, to me, still the best race of the season so far.
Okay,
not the best
we
race
agree to disagree, but I don't think
years.
it's a bad race though. But I think it was overrated. But I get why you say it, and I get why people say it. But I just wanted to shine a little bit of a different light on that matter as well.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
James, we can do it 2 ways. We can highlight a driver or 2 drivers which are on my list to highlight, or we can just take our scores from the last general list we make, and you give them a number up or down.
I don't think I've come in prepared for the second option, so let's talk about the 2 drivers. I think.
All right. Might be 3 drivers.
Okay.
I want to talk about Lance Stroll.
Yeah.
We can be very short about it, but done and dusted. He really washed. That was his own mistake.
Well, first of all, glad he's mostly okay. Obviously, he missed the race.
Yeah, because he will not drive in Japan, most likely.
I've seen a contradicting statement on that now. It had been reported that he wouldn't be racing, but then I saw something about Aston Martin saying to somebody that he would be racing. So I don't know if that's an official statement or if that was a team member talking to a member of press and then reporting on it. I don't know. But I've seen that he will be racing.
All right. So okay, that's good, though.
That is good. I mean, the fact that he got out of that car unassisted, like...
Aston Martin, I'm just checking, press statement, he will be back. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Sorry.
I mean, that was a massive impact. I mean, the tether on the front wheel didn't even survive that impact.
Snapped
Like
instantly.
that. And that's quite a rare thing to see at the moment.
But we can be honest there. It's too much, too often.
Yeah.
Glad he's all right, though, but it's not the first time.
I'm glad he's okay, but I say but, like, there shouldn't really be a but to that. I'm glad he is okay.
That's it. Okay, agree. Yuki Tsunoda, most unlucky man on the grid.
Yeah, Yuki. Yeah, what happened there? That was a bit of a run-in with Perez, wasn't it?
Didn't he drop out in lap 0?
It was the opening lap.
Again?
But it was a collision, I believe, with Perez. Perez went down the inside of him, and I think it was a racing incident. I don't even think it got investigated. Although AlphaTauri is probably not going to protest it, I think.
Talk about that in a moment.
Yeah, but I think Yuki didn't quite see that Perez was there, or didn't expect Perez to make a move. Perez made a brave move. It was an
optimistic move.
It was optimistic, but it's lap 1. Sometimes the cars are bunched up, and there can be quite a speed difference, and cars can slip down the inside into a gap that otherwise wouldn't be there. So Yuki probably should have just left a bit more space, personally, I think.
But then again, two dropout DNFs in 2 races now. So.
Yeah. Did you see the picture of the side of his car?
I did not know.
There was basically no flaw on the entire right-hand side of his car. It was shredded. Like, how did Perez not at the very least get a puncture? Never mind a damaged front end plate or any of the other like bits and pieces on the side of his car. It looked like Yuki's car had been in a proper wreck.
Nuts. There's so many drives I want to talk about, but
yep. Next,
let's go with George Russell just messing up. Period. And I think he knows it. Actually, I think he was tears in his eyes.
Yeah, well, I mean, he looked
and I'm
very
not sure
much
if I want to feel sorry or I'm like, you're not actually. I don't know if I have to feel sorry now at this stage for George, or I'm like, you might not be good enough or consistent enough. But what do you think?
I do feel a bit sorry for him just because he was having a very, very good weekend up until that point.
Definitely.
And it all just fell apart like after 99% of the race was complete. But a race...
You see a little grin actually when you said talking. You feel sorry, but you're also like, what drama? It's cool.
Well, a race requires you to finish and, you've got to perform for 100% of the race. And he slipped up. Norris said in the end on the post-race interview, that he'd clipped that wall very slightly. Later on, I think he'd said that his steering was potentially affected a little bit by it, and he'd noticed a problem with his steering slightly. But he thought that maybe Russell had just kind of followed his line and just ended up clipping it harder. Russell has said since then that it's not Norris's fault. It wasn't him following Norris's line. He just messed up basically, and it's all on himself. Yeah, I do feel sorry for him. I do think he had a very, very good weekend. But
better than Lewis actually had.
Other than some of the
a great qualification.
He had a very good quali. Overall the weekend was better. Whether that final stint Russell was faster than Hamilton, I'm not so sure. Hamilton was gaining on Russell as Russell was gaining on the cars ahead. I think Hamilton really came alive when he got that fresh set of soft medium tyres on. But could Hamilton have got past Norris? I don't know. I really don't know.
I really don't think you can. If one in front of you has a DRS and your cars are pretty similar, there's just no way of overtaking. Yeah, Max could almost pass Magnussen. And he had 3 attempts for that. So
There was a tyre difference there. Oh, or was there? What tyre was Magnussen on? Was he on the mediums?
Magnussen was on
hards?
mediums, while Max was on hards even. So.
Yeah, exactly. So that that kind of
true.
offsets
Yeah,
the car advantage a little bit. But
still, it's a Haas versus Red Bull.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let's say we will say George is unlucky. Let's give him the man of the match. No, that's Sainz, honestly. But Liam Lawson,
yeah, that was just amazing.
2 points, 9th position,
2 points,
qualifying intent.
He's got more than 50% of the points for AlphaTauri now, hasn't he? Or something.
3 races.
Oh, no, not quite. It's 3 points.
Survived Zandvoort carnage.
Yep.
Without practice.
Yeah.
Did a wonderful Monza, but just the car.
Yeah.
Got Singapore P9. I am thoroughly impressed by this buddy, by this guy. Wouldn't give him anything, if I'm honest, before we started. But
I wouldn't say you were down on him, but you weren't particularly hyped or have high expectations for him before he appeared. I was probably the same. I didn't really think one thing or the other, or have any expectations about him coming into Formula One.
No, exactly. Like I was like, probably decent driver. I don't know really. The rumor now is that Ricciardo, Denny, and Yuki will just get a contract extension at AlphaTauri.
Yeah.
So nothing will actually change in the lineup. But he does that. If we say Nick de Vries deserves a seat after one good drive in Monza and 3 different teams want him, Liam, after 3 races, 2 points scored, 3 excellent races, should get a seat next year at 18.
He should do, yeah. I wonder if they would lease him off to Williams in replacement.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Sargent, a bit like how Albon ended up there.
That's really what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, he needs a seat. I mean, he's already effectively sat out a year last year, didn't he?
Yeah.
So, he's proven over 3 races that he's capable.
Definitely.
So yeah,
not easy race.
Hopefully he gets a seat. Problem with Formula One is that there are only so many seats, and there are a lot of good drivers.
But there are a couple of guys that just shouldn't be there.
Well, there are, yeah.
And I think that's what really annoys me. I think Stroll showed it this weekend again. I definitely think Sargent. Well, he's Sargent. I think Magnussen and or Hulkenberg shows he's much better than Magnussen. Both got a contract extension. I know what Haas is driving for, if I'm honest. It's like, just you're there, but what do you do? And I find it a shame if I look at the GP Formula 2 talents and look at guys like Lawson, Drugovic, and like, why? But hey, enough of that frustration. Compliments to Liam Lawson. I think we should give compliments to Lewis. We should not underestimate Leclerc, because tactical, really well driven, really good team performances. Norris, brilliant race. Knew he couldn't take P1. Really played team with Carlos, and I think Carlos Sainz, 10+, brilliant weekend, brilliant drive. I told you he's coming in shape. He's got that raw talent. If he's in shape, he can beat Leclerc. And this is,
and throw my hands up in the air to this one. I've said, like, to me, there is Max and Lewis at the top, Leclerc kind of by himself in like 0.5 below them and 0.5 above everybody else, and everybody else in that next section below him being Norris, Carlos Sainz, probably Russell, maybe not quite Russell, so based on how this season's going. But yeah, I 100% agree. Carlo, if this race, I think I'm
got overcapacity while driving as well, though.
Yeah, I think I said to you at the end of the race, like, this proves to me that Carlos is that step above where I thought he was, and he is.
Carlos, come back to Red Bull. Just come back.
I don't think he will now. Well,
No, I'm pretty sure he signed for Audi already. And he's now showing that everyone at Ferrari that, hey, you should have given me that contract.
yeah, maybe. But yeah, that was a masterclass. Like there's a point on the radio, and not on the radio, sorry, on the TV coverage, when I felt like I was shouting at the commentators because they weren't understand. It felt like they weren't understanding, or at least they weren't calling out what he was doing. And that was when it was immediately when he said, from now on, gap to Norris every lap.
Every lap, yeah.
It's like, right, he's trying to pull Norris with him. And
Ferrari didn't understand it either, by the way.
No. But it was it kind of felt obvious at the time. And then when he was like, the commentary sort of started to understand, and it was like, yeah, he's keeping Norris in DRS because Norris in DRS prevents the Mercedes that should be faster than them both from being able to make any meaningful progress. And by the two of them effectively kind of sort of teaming up, I think Lando would have loved to have just pushed for the win on the final lap if he could have done, but he obviously couldn't. And, you know, there's this talk about like their like little bromance or whatever from when they were McLaren drivers. It's not like Carlos wanted Lando to finish second. Carlos just wanted to finish first.
Yeah.
And Lando was just a means to that objective. It could have been
and he was
Lando,
fine in P2. He knew that's it.
Yeah,
it's either P2 or I'll get forward.
Yeah, it could have been any driver other than probably a Red Bull, because Red Bull's DRS might have been enough.
Yeah.
But any other driver, he wouldn't care who it was. He would have done the exact same thing because it was all about preventing Mercedes from making the most of their tyre advantage and cutting through the pair of them. Because if Mercedes had the opportunity to attack both of them without DRS, Mercedes would have got 1-2 in that race.
100%.
So that was just a strategic masterclass from Carlos, whilst under the amount of pressure he was under. That was just that's why
and telling your team
I
what the
enjoyed that
plan
race
is
so much. Yeah, but yeah, it's
0.8. Yep, I'm doing this on purpose.
Yeah.
Like, and then everyone's like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's easy for us to sit as spectators and kind of call it or whatever and say, oh, yeah, we knew he was doing that. But he's doing that whilst potentially doing 160 mile an hour or whatever the top speed is down some of those straights, fighting through those corners and stuff.
Being an inch off the wall.
Yeah. He's got immense concentration just to drive around that track at those speeds. And then he's looking at the bigger picture as well and what everyone else is doing. He's aware that the Mercedes are catching at a rate of knots. He's aware that Lando's behind him in the McLaren. And he just knew what to do, and he put that plan into action, and it paid off for him. And I'm so glad that it did, because I'm so happy that he won that race with that sort of thinking and that strategy.
Definitely. I mean, pure brilliance. Can't say, and I've never said that I think Carlos has the potential to do stuff like this. There's a couple of drivers that has these overcapacity.
Yeah,
like we're thinking along while race, we're doing multiple things at the same time. Lewis, definitely. Max, you can see him watching some of the things going on track and commentating about that while being in a fight, whatever.
Yeah.
Alonso has that. Where you can see Alonso think about stuff and say, hey, maybe we should do this. Or, hey, what happened here? Or is he all right? Well, actually, someone crashed while he's still driving, and you can see it on one of the screens going past. And I think Sainz is definitely one of those. I don't think Leclerc has that. I don't know about Norris because he hasn't been in that position too often. I can't really see. Could be.
The only time,
but I do think Piastri has it.
Maybe. Not really heard too much from Piastri on the radio, really. But because what I was thinking was how Carlos has questioned and has made decisions strategy-wise mid-race.
Yeah.
And I always think, and I think I've said it before during this podcast, that it is a bit of a double-edged sword, because the driver doesn't necessarily see everything that the strategist is seeing and the team's seeing, and but They
does.
also have a good idea of how well the tyres are performing and what their pace could be, either for the rest of the stint on those tyres or if they're on a new set of tyres. Now, to be fair, a lot of drivers would just say, like, for example, these tyres are dead, I need some new tyres. And the engineer would say, well, we can't do that because that's going to cost us 30 seconds or whatever, and we can't afford 30 seconds. Because some drivers will complain about that. Lewis has done that before because he just wants to go fast. But that's not how a race always goes, because if a race was just about going fast, there'd be no pit stops, there'd be no refueling, we'd just get sprint races. But that's not Formula One. Formula One is about strategies, tactics, and having to make use of two different types of tyres, balancing your car for that, whatever. So yeah, I mean, Carlos, going back to him, he's made a lot of kind of shout outs over the radio before, hasn't he? So it's always kind of been there, but I've never quite. I think in the past when he's got it right, I've always sort of thought, well, he's maybe been lucky because, like I say, it is a double-edged sword and you can get it wrong because you don't know what the engineers can see, but he definitely got it right this race.
Yeah, true. Very much, just brilliant.
Yeah.
I don't actually have too much left.
No, I was just thinking, I think that covers the majority of the race, really. Like everything that's happening in the front.
Should we try to do another...
One thing I do want to shout out, actually.
Don't shout, though. Right.
I'm not going to shout it.
Okay.
Ocon's overtake on Alonso. Phenomenal driving from Ocon. And I was gutted for him when his car then a few laps later packed in. He was having a very good race. But yeah, that was the only other thing I think I wanted to mention.
Yeah, and sorry, Alex, for Checo dumping you out of the race.
Yeah, yeah, that's not great for Williams, that either, is it?
No, that's a painful one for points as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I can. That one might have hurt. But I'm not going to talk about penalty systems. But I do want to mention one thing. Let's not do any predictions for Japan. But as a Max Verstappen fan, I have to say that Max deserved a penalty from qualifying. I think Max thinks he should deserve a penalty. And the only reason why Max doesn't say he deserves a penalty is because he once said, back in the day, could be in Singapore as well, that he did something wrong and he got penalized without actually being investigated. But because he said they will investigate it, so he'll shut up about it, which I think is fine. What happened is AlphaTauri didn't send a representative, which isn't that uncommon, if I'm quite honest.
Well, apparently,
but it shouldn't be based on the fact if there's a representative there, right?
No. So apparently they didn't actually get notice to send anybody. And then it sounded like it was a bit of a mishmash of how other teams had been notified, if at all. I think, was it Aston Martin maybe?
Didn't get to send anyone.
It wasn't Aston Martin then. Who else was there?
That was Aston Martin. They had to send someone as well, but they were actually like, oh,
well,
really?
Aston Martin didn't. So apparently this is why they sometimes don't turn up, because they are told beforehand what the likelihood is of the outcome. And I think Aston Martin have basically been told it's not likely to end up being a penalty, so there's not going to be much to discuss. That's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
Whether that's it, I mean, that's me kind of shrinking that down into a bite-sized chunk. That's probably not exactly what they said. I don't think they said to Aston Martin, it's not going to be a penalty, so don't send it on. But that's broadly how it goes. But I think it must have been Williams then. Like, they got notified by a WhatsApp message or something. There was definitely a team that was notified about turning up to the steward's room for something being investigated, and their notification was via a WhatsApp message to a member of the team or something. Like, that's not professional, is it? Like, email the team so that to an inbox that multiple people can pick up.
No, but I think basic rules here is that the steward just made a mess of this, period. I don't think it's anything to do with benefit Red Bull or AlphaTauri not wanted to get into
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing specifically in this case, and there have been other cases like it, but this one in particular, if we're talking about this case, it doesn't need a representative to turn up and say Yuki lost his lap because it is clear as day that Yuki lost his lap because he was held up. He abandoned the lap and then only got one more run in the rest of the Q2.
And Max was smart. Max just said when they interviewed him, do you think you get a penalty? And he says, well, it doesn't really matter if I do, if I start 11, 15, 18. We'll see.
Yeah.
He's not saying I didn't do anything, wasn't worth it.
No, because he can't get a penalty,
right?
Yeah.
He's just not saying that loud because it screwed him before. I think and you can't blame him for not saying yes to that thing, right?
No, it's 100% on the stewards for not doing their job, basically.
Yeah, and that's the tricky thing is, I was like immediately, I've been advocating for this for a while. Just put the same stewards back every week, right?
Yeah.
But then I got a message. I forgot to mention. If you're listening to the show, sorry, I forgot. But someone sent me a message like, yeah, but then you're like, back in the day where you also Verstappen said, this steward really hates Max Verstappen. He's always penalizing him. Or this one really hates or prefers Lewis, so he's always going like, yeah, you can't really do it as right anyways. As a
no, I think I think mixing it up is right, but I think that it needs to be mixed up by a specific pool of, say, like let's say that you have 3 stewards per race, and that way you've got an odd number. You haven't got too many people, so it can't become this big argument. You've just got 3 people to discuss it, and it could go down to a vote. However they do it, it's always going to go one way or the other because it's always going to be 2-1 one way or another.
True.
You have to make a decision one way or another. You can't say, I don't know, and then But let's say you have 3 at each race. Well, why don't we just have a pool of 9? And then you
swap those around. Yeah.
Mix it around, and then you never get the same 3. You don't get this 3 at this race, this 3 at this. You get a broad spectrum of that 9 across every race for the season. Mm-hmm. And then, there might be a driver who might have a bias to, or rather for or against a specific driver.
But doesn't necessarily mean that driver gets into a situation. It has to be
if they might be trying to argue something against a driver when it's very clearly for a driver, for example, and the other 2 would effectively overrule that in the best out of 3 vote or whatever. So, I just look at other sports, like you have referees, and you can't just have a specific referee or set of referees.
Definitely some disadvantage having certain referees as well, right?
Well, yeah, there probably is. I mean,
like when I look at the list, like this Sunday, this referee's like, well.
I don't follow football. I don't even follow the NBA as closely as I used to. But I know in the NBA there was jokes. There was one point there was a stat about how a specific player never seemed to win a game when he was being refereed by a specific referee.
Until that stat came out, right?
Yeah. Well, even when that stat came out and that run carried on for quite a few, but like, I don't think it was because that referee was picking on that particular player. That was just a funny meme in the end.
Yeah, fair.
But
I just wanted to make that statement. Like, I'm biased, right? Definitely, sure, I'm a fan. This was a penalty. I think Max thought it was a penalty. Red Bull was almost already looking forward to just rebuilding the car and started on pit lane, I guess, right? Like, we probably should discuss this. Then it got like no penalty. Like, what? Even everyone was surprised. And that wasn't an AlphaTauri mistake. It wasn't politics. It was purely 100% a fault with the stewards. Period.
It should be on the stewards, because, like you said, it shouldn't matter whether somebody turns up or not. Like,
if I drive through a red light and there's it has taped on video, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't need the driver behind me to say I actually did that.
Yeah, and it doesn't need the police to turn up and say he went through that red light. It's there on camera. It's automated. You get your fixed penalty notice.
Exactly. I think so. Just want to put it out there. Bad decision. He should have gotten a penalty.
Yeah.
I'm glad he didn't, but that's the bias. But it should be.
I want to correct myself maybe a little bit, because I think they do already have a pool of stewards. I think what the problem is that they don't have maybe very strict or clear guidelines for the stewards. I think that's the problem, because how can you look at this weekend and say, no, that's not a penalty, and then 3 weeks ago or whenever it was, a very similar incident happened, and they say, well, that's a penalty. Like, it should always be one or the other.
Here's the different thing. Even if that's a stadium group, how can you communicate to someone through a WhatsApp?
Oh yeah,
He doesn't. We know that's not foolproof. And then afterwards, immediately it gets leaks out that the representative doesn't actually showed up, without asking why. Then a day later, we get like, hey, we got an app to someone who wasn't actually involved, etc., etc. So we actually didn't even know, and that came from multiple teams saying stuff like that.
Yeah.
Why does it, like, there should be a statement from the steward saying, okay, hey, we messed up communication. That's why they didn't show up. So this was on us. Well, instead of making it seem like there was politics involved.
They put out press releases. It should be in that as well. And then there is no way that the teams don't know, because they're looking at that stuff. And if they're not looking at it, somebody else is looking at it and telling them, you know. So
it looks a bit silly, honestly.
It looks like amateur hour is what it looks like. It's like the Formula One circus.
It looks like some Lance Stroll during qualifying.
Wow.
Looks like George Russell on the last lap of the race.
Yeah.
It looks like Sargent just like all the time.
Ooh.
Okay, he's not getting on the show anytime soon, I think so.
Probably not, but
we just lost half of our US fan base. But
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
maybe
well, US and Canada.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, well, okay, that was our last two countries. We can do this podcast in Dutch next week.
Wow, I got a lot of learning to do in a week.
You'll be all right. You're right.
Just give me the
just say super Max, you'll be fine. James, any bold predictions for the next race, my friend? Japan, early morning. Let me just ask your top three.
Top three. Max, Carlos, Leclerc.
No, it's actually the same top three as I had, so I'm not thinking.
You could just say the same if you want.
Nah, that won't be fun. But I am going to go with Max.
Yeah.
I will be saying Norris P2. And I will be saying Lewis P3. Because there's going to be an incident with the Ferraris.
Maybe.
Because now the team things now are getting tense, right? They had a fight at Monza. Well, Sainz being better. Leclerc showing here and that Sainz being another race better, where they actually had both opportunities again.
Yeah.
If Charles qualifies in front of Sainz, it is going to be ending in a crash this weekend.
Yeah, he's not going to let Carlos through if he ends up in front of him. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, Leclerc, this is a statement race for him, I think.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying it's not going to end well. And some things got to give. And in this case, I'm afraid Sainz has got to give because they just re-signed Leclerc. So,
yeah.
But you can have Checo. We will take Sainz. No worries. So, James, I'm going to see you. I'm going to talk to you Sunday after the race, of course.
Yep.
We'll be back, by the way. This was my schedule was a little bit of a mess. So that means this show was a little bit late on release. Next week on Wednesday, 6 p.m. UK time. This is the new show. The post-Japanese show will, of course, be live. Just putting it out there. So apologies for the delay, but see you next week.
See you next week, yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.